In a world where perfection is idolized, it's easy to feel like we're constantly falling short. Every day, we are surrounded by images of flawless beauty, success, and happiness. Social media, advertisements, and even the people around us seem to present an unattainable ideal, a version of life without blemish, error, or failure. But what if the pursuit of perfection is actually what's holding us back? What if, instead of striving to eliminate every flaw, we could learn to embrace them as a core part of who we are? Perfection is a mirage, an ideal that moves further away the closer we get. And the constant chase to achieve it often leaves us feeling inadequate, drained, and disconnected from our true selves. This story is about challenging the notion that we need to be perfect to be worthy, lovable, or successful. It's about learning to embrace our flaws and discovering the immense power and freedom that comes with that acceptance. The perfection myth. Perfectionism is often praised as a desirable trait, a sign of high standards and ambition. Yet, in reality, it can lead to a deep sense of dissatisfaction. When we believe that we must be perfect to be valued, we create an impossible standard for ourselves, setting the stage for chronic disappointment. The truth is, perfection is not only unattainable, it's unnatural. No one is flawless, and attempting to appear so often means hiding who we truly are. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are, they are not perfect, and it's likely not their perfection that you admire. It's their authenticity, their willingness to be vulnerable, and their ability to persevere despite their imperfections. The people who inspire us the most are often those who have embraced their flaws, turning them into sources of strength rather than things to be ashamed of. Why we fear our flaws. So why is it so difficult to embrace our flaws? At its core, the fear of imperfection is often tied to a fear of rejection. We believe that if others see our flaws, whether physical, emotional, or personal, they will think less of us. We worry that we'll be judged, ridiculed, or excluded if we don't measure up to society's standards. This fear can run deep, often starting in childhood when we first learn that certain behaviors, appearances, or traits are deemed acceptable while others are not. Over time, we internalize these messages and begin to hide or mask the parts of ourselves that don't align with societal expectations. We spend energy trying to fix, hide, or minimize these flaws, hoping that by doing so, we'll finally be enough. But this strategy rarely works. The more we try to suppress our imperfections, the more disconnected we become from our authentic selves. We may appear perfect on the outside, but inside, we feel like imposters, constantly worried that someone will see through the facade. Reframing imperfections. Embracing your flaws begins with reframing how you see them. Rather than viewing your imperfections as weaknesses, consider how they contribute to your uniqueness. What makes you different from others can also be what makes you special. Take, for example, someone who struggles with anxiety. At first glance, this may seem like a flaw, a trait that makes life more difficult. But anxiety can also foster empathy and sensitivity. Those who experience it often develop a deep understanding of others' emotions, making them excellent listeners and compassionate friends. Instead of seeing anxiety as something to fix, it can be viewed as a complex part of who they are, bringing both challenges and gifts. The same is true for physical imperfections. A scar, a birthmark, or a body that doesn't fit conventional standards of beauty may be seen as flaws in a superficial sense. But these imperfections often tell stories of survival, resilience, or personal history. They make us unique, and they remind us of the richness of our experiences. The role of vulnerability. At the heart of embracing flaws is the willingness to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as weakness, but in truth, it's a profound form of strength. To be vulnerable is to show up as you are, without pretense, and to allow others to see your real self, flaws and all. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open the door to deeper connections with others. It's through our imperfections that we relate to one another. No one is perfect, and by sharing our struggles and insecurities, we create space for others to do the same. In a world obsessed with appearances, vulnerability is a radical act of authenticity. Brené Brown, a researcher who has studied vulnerability for years, emphasizes that it's in our willingness to be seen that we find true belonging. Hiding behind a mask of perfection may protect us from rejection, but it also keeps us isolated. When we embrace our flaws, we invite real connection into our lives. Self-compassion, the key to acceptance. One of the most important steps in embracing your flaws is cultivating self-compassion. Too often, we are our own harshest critics, berating ourselves for every perceived imperfection. But what if we treated ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend? Self-compassion means acknowledging that everyone has flaws and that it's okay to be imperfect. It's about recognizing that you are worthy of love and acceptance, not because you are perfect, but because you are human. It allows you to offer yourself grace when you make mistakes, rather than falling into a cycle of self-criticism. Practicing self-compassion also helps to quiet the inner voice that tells you that you're not good enough. Over time, this practice can shift your relationship with your flaws, allowing you to see them as part of your wholeness, rather than something to be fixed. The power of imperfection. When we embrace our flaws, we unlock a powerful truth. Perfection is not where beauty lies. True beauty comes from authenticity, from the courage to show up as you are, and from the wisdom to know that your worth is not tied to being flawless. By embracing imperfection, we free ourselves from the exhausting cycle of trying to meet impossible standards. We allow ourselves to experience life fully, without the constant need to hide or apologize for who we are. And in doing so, we inspire others to do the same. Imperfection connects us. It's through our shared struggles, insecurities, and vulnerabilities that we find empathy and understanding. Our flaws make us relatable, approachable, and real. Life is full of imperfections, and in a world that idolizes flawlessness, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that every aspect of ourselves must be polished, edited, and improved. From the small quirks in our appearance to the deeper insecurities we carry within, we often strive to hide or fix these flaws, hoping that one day we'll finally become our ideal selves. But what if, instead of striving for perfection, we learn to embrace our flaws? What if we stopped viewing imperfections as weaknesses and began to see them as unique traits that shape our character and experience? The process of self-acceptance begins when we realize that imperfection is not something to be feared, but something to be celebrated. Embracing your flaws doesn't mean giving up on growth or change. Rather, it means accepting yourself as you are in the present moment. It's recognizing that your scars, physical or emotional, tell a story of resilience. The moments where you've stumbled or faced challenges aren't marks of failure. They're evidence of your strength and humanity. One of the keys to embracing flaws is shifting the narrative. Society may tell us that imperfections are undesirable, but when we look closer, we see that the people who inspire us are often those who are unapologetically themselves. They don't hide their uniqueness or cover up their struggles. Instead, they use their flaws as a source of authenticity, turning what might seem like vulnerabilities into sources of connection and strength. Another important aspect of embracing flaws is practicing self-compassion. It's easy to be your own harshest critic, but it's much harder and far more rewarding to treat yourself with the kindness and understanding you'd offer to a friend. When we stop judging ourselves so harshly, we create space for growth. We realize that flaws are simply part of the human condition, not something to be ashamed of. Perfection is a moving target, always just out of reach. But imperfection is real, grounding, and relatable. It's in those moments of imperfection where true beauty and strength emerge. When we embrace our flaws, we stop chasing the impossible and start embracing the freedom that comes with authenticity. The journey to embracing your flaws doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice of learning to see yourself with new eyes, reframing your narrative, and choosing to love yourself, not despite your imperfections, but because of them. And in doing so, you unlock the power of imperfection, an acceptance that leads not to perfection, but to wholeness, where your flaws become the very thing that make you uniquely and beautifully you. Conclusion: embrace the journey. Embracing your flaws is not a one-time decision. It's an ongoing journey. There will be days when you feel at peace with your imperfections, and other days when you find yourself falling back into old patterns of self-criticism. But each time you choose acceptance over judgment, you take a step closer to true self-love. Remember, your flaws are not something to be ashamed of. They are part of what makes you, you. They tell the story of your life, your experiences, and your growth. So, let go of the need to be perfect. Embrace your imperfections, for they are the very things that make you beautifully and uniquely human. The power of imperfection is in its ability to connect, heal, and free us. By accepting yourself fully, flaws and all, you unlock a life of authenticity, deeper connection, and inner peace. And in the end, that's far more valuable than any fleeting illusion of perfection.